When you create a mapping in Solidity, it will be virtually initialized with every possible key and their respective default values. Here you can see the typical types and their respective default values. So when you create our original address to uint256 mapping, every possible address will be initially mapped to number 0. That's different from a hash table. If you try to look up the value for a key which hasn't been inserted into a hash table, it would throw an error. In Solidity, you would get the default value returned. Now, for other types, the default values are always what the value would be if all bits are set to 0. So, for example, Boolean would be false, string would be the empty string, number, any number type, as we already said, is just 0. Bytes are of course 0 bytes, which as Solidity shortcut you could write as bytes 32 of 0. Address is just a 0 address, and again as Solidity shortcut would be address of 0. And the other types we will look at later in the course, but the general idea of default values should be clear. It also implies that there is no concept of length or keys in a Solidity mapping. And in fact, because of this, you cannot just iterate over all values inside a mapping, because you don't know what the keys are. If you really must have this functionality, use arrays. You could even combine mappings and arrays. You would do that by having a mapping and additionally you store all mapping keys inside an array. So here you would have a mapping and an array with the same type as the mapping keys. So address and address. And every time you set a new address key inside the mapping, you also store it inside the array. In general though, I would say think about a different design which doesn't require you to iterate over all values in a mapping if possible.